Hello everyone. Today we shall be discussing about types of instructional strategies that can be used in any classroom. Why is this required to discuss? Well, since time immemorial, this has been one of the most mind-boggling issue for the educators round the globe. The challenge has grown by folds. It is imperative for a teacher to have in-depth knowledge of different pedagogical approaches to accomplish the role of an educator. In modern times, the instructional challenges are different. Researchers have proven that traditional teaching strategies often do not work in the current technology-driven times. Social media exposure and the new lifestyle often expose young children to a variety of emotions, which is required to be understood well before intervening. A teacher requires to deeply understand a child's psychology to be able to effectively deliver the instructions. The great scientist Albert Einstein once said, "It is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken the joy in creative expression and knowledge." So let's see how we as educators can awaken this joy of learning amongst our students. So let's first see what research has provided us. According to Murray, things are changing in our classroom. Central to this change is the way learning takes place. Innovative pedagogy is one way of enhancing teaching and learning performance and primarily entails the use of suitable innovative teaching techniques. What can these be? Let's see. The first approach is called as pedagogy. We have used this term multiple times in this presentation itself. We shall be looking at it for more detail in the coming slides. The second technique is andragogy. Third, multiple intelligence theory. Fourth, social learning theory. And fifth is exchange theory. So in this tutorial, we shall be focusing on these 5 theories of instruction that have been prescribed by researchers. Okay, we'll start first with the pedagogy. So in pedagogy, according to Holmes and Cooper, the pedagogical model is a content model concerned with the transmitting of information and skills. Now, how can this be done? So in this model, the teacher will first decide in advance what knowledge or skill needs to be transmitted. Based on that, the teacher will arrange this body of content into logical units. Thereafter, the teacher will select the most efficient means for transmitting this content. Now, the means of transmission of content can be lectures, can be readings, lab exercises, hands-on activity, maybe a video or some data, anything. And finally, the teacher will develop a plan for presenting these units in some orderly sequence, some meaningful way. So in this way, this is a very traditional model, and ever since we have been teaching, we have been planning the curriculum around this line. Moving on to our next technique, that is andragogy. Let's see what does it mean. So according to Holmes and Cooper, the andragogical model is a process concerned with providing procedures and resources for helping learners acquire information and skills. In this model, the teacher acts as a facilitator, a change agent, a consultant, a mentor. And the teacher prepares a set of procedures for involving the learners in a process. That may include establishing a climate conducive to learning, or creating a mechanism for mutual planning, or to diagnose the need of learning. Then together, the learners and the teacher may formulate program objectives or content that will satisfy these learning needs. Further, designing of a pattern of learning experiences, and then to conduct these learning experiences with suitable techniques, resources, or materials as required. Finally, evaluating the learning outcomes and re-diagnosing the learning needs. So this is a very advanced, or we can say the 21st century learning model, which we commonly also call as a student-centered approach, where learning is driven by the learners rather than the teacher. So we shall be looking further with some examples how pedagogy and andragogy are different from each other, how the learning needs of today's learners require an andragogical approach as well. All right, now moving on to the third instructional theory. Let's see, what is it? The third theory is multiple intelligence theory. Now, Karaduman and Sihan describe this theory, which argues that people have talents and potentialities in different fields. Multiple intelligence theory could be divided into 9 different abilities area. So the theory says that people have got intelligence in these 9 diverse areas, which can be linguistic, logical mathematical intelligence, spatial intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalist, or existential. Now, this theory has 2 important benefits for education. First is that it enables the training programs to be planned in a way to bring the students to the desired situation. Now, it's likely that a student can have abilities in more than one of these intelligence areas based on their abilities, or we can say strengths. We can channel them in the right way for maximum benefit. The second advantage of the model is that it provides access to more students who are trying to learn different topics in different disciplines. So in this learning model, a student's diverse strengths can be pulled in for a common learning objective. Again, when we'll be discussing the examples, the clarity will be better. Moving on to the next learning theory, which is commonly called as social learning theory. So this has been described as how people learn by observing the behavior of others. And yes, this is true. We all have had experiences where we are inspired or motivated by people whom we see in society. So this process is basically about modeling. Learners are influenced by models. which include not just the educational models but real life models. A teacher often serves as a real-time model. This process has four component parts: attention, retention, motor reproduction, and motivation. Now, a teacher can model all these four attributes live every day in a classroom to inspire the learners. For instance, an attentive, responsive behavior of teacher can inspire the learner for these social attributes. However, environmental and cognitive factors can influence the process too. So this is a very critical, challenging aspect or a strategy to incorporate in, but it's needed. It's highly impactful. Let's move on to our last learning theory, which we call as exchange theory. Now, this theory has described human behavior or social interaction as exchange. We all know that our behavior is an exchange of the reaction. It is reactive. Okay, what you receive, you give in that way most of the times. Our society is based on exchanges. We pay money, we buy things. In early times, people used to exchange goods from each other. So this is a part of human behavior ever since we have grown up, from early man time to now. As a child to an adult, we have been doing this. So this is somewhere embedded in our psychological system. Exchange is defined as social interaction characterized by aspects including reciprocal stimuli, which is like a short-term response, and enduring long-term social relations. Now, what does that mean? So, in general, social exchange theory emphasizes that individuals engage in dyadic relationships to maximize personal outcomes. Now, these personal outcomes can be tangible or intangible, that varies. But yes, there need to be personal outcomes that would otherwise be difficult to achieve independently. For example, in a mentoring relationship, a faculty member may experience a psychological benefit from helping a student develop her dissertation, but nevertheless experience costs in terms of time and attention to research. For a student, valued resources may include assistance with issues related to ideas discussed in class, maybe career plans or personal problems, research collaborations, or any other issues even unrelated to the coursework. So a mentor and a student have an exchange-based social relation, and these relations hold great significance for a teacher and student at every level, from kindergarten to universities. So now that we are done with all the 5 theories of instructional strategies, we will have a look at them again once. So this is how the 5 theories were there. We have talked about each one of them, and now we are trying to apply them for a lesson objective. So we'll take a topic. I have picked up a topic from science. So this is the topic, which is related to NGS's standard high school earth and space science, as mentioned, HSESS 3.1. The topic is how the availability of natural resources, occurrence of natural hazards, and changes in climate affect human sustainability. Now we will see that how using the 5 different instructional strategies we can teach the same topic. So we'll go one by one. Now the first theory is pedagogy. To teach this unit, one of the teaching strategies can be teacher provides lecture on the topic, students take notes, and a written question answer format assessment is carried out. This is how in ancient time probably our grandfathers used to study like that, right? The strategy 2, however, is a flipped classroom. Students read the content provided by the teacher, followed by a class discussion on questions that follow. So now strategy 2 is still a pedagogical approach, but it is more learner-centered, which has been recent times or modern approach as we know. How is andragogy different then? In andragogy, strategy 1 can be that students are provided with data to analyze and draw conclusions about the cause and effect of the subject matter. So they can be given data about availability of natural resources, occurrence of natural hazards, and climatic changes, and then they draw conclusion. They analyze the data and draw conclusions about the topic to answer the big question. Else, in strategy 2, students brainstorm together, ask questions, share their observation and experiences, they define the problem, develop hypotheses, investigate solutions, and construct explanations. Now, this is a more advanced andragogical approach where it is a completely student-driven learning. There is a lot of critical thinking process in the next strategy. But definitely you see how pedagogy and andragogy, the approach is different. Let's see how the other learning models are different. The next learning model, the multiple intelligence theory, can be used in this way. Students will be assigned tasks based on the 9 areas of intelligence. For instance, the linguistically intelligent learners can be asked to write a persuasive newspaper article to enlighten the leaders regarding the subject matter and raise awareness. Accordingly, students of different areas of intelligence can be assigned different tasks. Alternatively, for the logical mathematical intelligence students, they can be given data to analyze and make future predictions based on the statistics. So this is like a little higher level using the basic mathematical intelligence skill. In this theory, in this model, we are focusing on the strengths of the learner only. Moving on. The fourth technique of social learning theory. The tasks can be designed to help students to be attentive and have prolonged retention. Students remember more when they see something rather than only listening. So if audio-visual presentations are used, they can help in cognition and retention. Students can also be asked to enact a skit to show the impact of climate change on humans, or can be asked to simulate a model summarizing the key concept. So in this, the 4 attributes of social learning are targeted and kept in mind. For the last theory, exchange theory, the exchange of information can be focused upon. So there needs to be a social exchange. How can we do that? Skype calls between students of 2 different regions can help students evaluate the observations, experiences, and point of views of people from a different region. Thereby, it broadens their perspective for the pertaining issue. An interview with a weather expert or geologic scientist can provide a real-life experience to learn about the topic. So in this way, if given opportunities about socially interacting with people, students develop important life skills too. Now we see that all the 5 models have got some interesting way to teach this topic. What do we conclude? The conclusions include this. It is imperative to shift from teacher-centered to learner-centered education in the modern times. We cannot restrict ourselves to teacher-centered conventional model. Secondly, every instructional strategy has its own implications and applications to benefit a learner. Every strategy gave us an interesting idea to teach the topic of concern. So, what is the ideal approach? The ideal approach can be a blended integrated learning plan that includes all the mentioned theories. Yes, it is the ideal approach. This is the approach that is required in 21st century education. What is this? Let's have a detailed look. In the blended integrated learning model, we often call it 5E instructional cycle model too. Now, you might have heard of this approach, or some of you might be using this also, but the question here is that how these 5Es are related to the 5 theories that we have studied today. The 5Es are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Now, most likely, all the mentioned theories will find a place to fit in, thereby maximizing students' learning, motivation, and engagement, which is every educator's dream. So, engage relates to social learning, where the learner will observe the world around him and learn something. It will get engaged in the problem. So for instance, about the topic of from science, Earth and space science, the learner will see the data trend to figure out if that is a question of concern, if there is a cause and effect from the data available. Explore relates to multiple intelligence. Now, based on whatever the learner observes from the data, reported data, the different learners will analyze the data in different ways based on their strengths, based on their intelligence domain. And maybe they will come up with their own different analysis and reflections, which leads to the collaborative learning of students. So different students can have different input for the project, and they can collaborate further using their strengths to move ahead. The next E is explain, which also is a highly significant part of the entire instructional cycle. In this pedagogy, explain part, the teacher may facilitate learning by providing the required information, the required content, learning, and to help the learning to progress. The next E is elaborate. Now, by the explain model, students must have had a clarity about what is the topic, what are the questions, and they are having some data which will be leading them to solutions. At this point in time, they will elaborate by exchanging the information from experts, from peers, from general public to fine tune, to further refine their learning. Lastly, evaluate. Here is an andragogical concept where learners can be given a choice to express, to present what they have learned. Again, this evaluation can be a performance-based evaluation based on the different learning skills. Very clearly, we need to have all these 5 theories to make a perfect learning model. So I hope this is helpful for all of you. And next time, if you are working on a unit plan, maybe it will be ideal to keep in mind these 5 E's with relation to the 5 instructional strategies to make your lesson plan, make your instruction perfect. These are the references that I used while creating this work, as we must depend upon research, peer-reviewed research. So here is the information. Thank you so much for watching. Happy learning, happy teaching. Goodbye.